into hole punch it or get into the holes anywhere, that's another good way to do it. But if you're gonna do it, you got to stick to it. You know, you can't just make 5-10 casts in there and be like, all right, they're not there. That's not gonna help you any. This is the one time where you can actually hop your bait and not drag it. When you're throwing a jig or something like that out a little bit deeper, you want it to hit the water and then you're going to drag slowly. That's when the fish are on the bottom. You don't want it to hop, you want to drag it. When the fish are suspended like that, you want it to keep falling, because it's that fall that triggers them to bite. So you want to, you know, not even hop it up, it's just lift your rod up or reel fast and then let it fall again. And then real fast and then let it fall again. And real fast and let it fall until you get it back to the boat. Because you're fishing for those fish that are up in the water columns, which is most of the time what they do on these high, sunny, bright days. If you get clouds and stuff, they'll be scattered and more on the bottom. Or if you have a lot of wind, they'll be more on the bottom. But when you get these high days where there's not a lot of sun, or it's a high pressure day and it's a ton of sun, that's when you want to fish for ones that are off the bottom. They'll tuck right up underneath of those pads. That way, if you get to the edge of it and it's falling and they see it, that's how you're going to catch it. Also, your line is going to dictate how slow or fast your bait falls. So the heavier the line, the slower it's going to fall. So keep that in mind too. If you're usually with a 3/16 or 1/4 ounce, you want to use 17 pound. It has the best rate of fall, and it's not falling like entirely too slow or way too fast. Now that's fluorocarbon too. If you use braid, which I wouldn't recommend using here, you can get away with it if you have a leader, but straight braid, I just have no confidence in it. If you do, that's fine, you can use it, but braid sinks too. So with a 3/16 ounce weight, if you're throwing braid, it's just going to kill the action of the bait. You're not going to get any flutter. You're not going to get the legs to kick real fast. Monofilament's the same way. It's got a slower fall to it. Fluorocarbon's a lot more expensive, but it's definitely the better line to use, and more abrasion resistant when you're fishing around cover. 15, 17. I wouldn't go any lighter or heavier than either of those. And your rod, you're going to need a long, stiff rod to get them out of the stuff too. So you want to use 7.3 or 7.6 or anything higher than that. Medium heavy with a fast gear ratio reel. That way sometimes they'll bite and they'll run right at you, or they'll run to the side. That way you can pick up that slack before you set the hook. Also, if you're riding along, you're trolling along and you see submerged grass underneath of you, back up a little bit and fish it, and stay on the edge. Sometimes they'll come out in this deeper grass too that's you can't see, and that tends to be less pressured too, because people are fishing what they can see. A lot of times they'll be up in that 8 foot or 6 to 8 foot range where that grass isn't visible unless you're seeing it on your electronics. So that's another thing you want to definitely look for. If it's got a high spot on it or a low spot where that grass is, it's even better. So, or if you go over top of it and you feel like you've spooked them, then just mark it and come back to it later. Just leave as your waypoint that, type in deep grass or something so you remember to come back to it. Generally, you're not going to see any grass deeper than 8 foot. Unless this water gets really clear, it's not going to grow that deep. Right now, it seems like it stops at like 7 foot at the deepest I've found it. But if you can find those spots where it's in 7 foot, that's a good bet. Especially if it's near an edge or a creek channel or the main channel. Any kind of deep water access is important. You'll notice a lot of the fish will be near deep water. It tends to be less, it doesn't matter as much the later in the summer that it gets, like once it gets towards fall, but early in the year, in the spring and the summer, it's definitely one of the most important things, is having deep water access. And if you're wondering how far is deep water access close by, Generally, you want it to be like within 30 yards, 20 to 30 yards, but closer is obviously better. Um, so pay attention to that too. And really, fishing grass is all about attention to details. I mean, it really is. It's when you see, you know, there's a whole bunch of it, and you're wondering, how do I even start to go about this? You want to start with the obvious stuff, you know, like the points, where grass comes into a point. Anywhere it makes a point. Anywhere where it's grass and then it turns into pads, like you can see right here. And this is one of, I mean, it's a great spot right here. You catch them here often. But if you see where there's grass and then the grass stops and then it starts into pads again. I mean, this right here is a great transition. That's the kind of stuff that they'll get around most of the time. If not all the time. I mean, there's plenty of days where I'll pull up and I'll catch one or two out of this and then keep going and catch one or two where it stops and starts again. So, and then if you'll see you have pads and then a hole and then pads and then a hole. Both of those holes are stuff you want to hit. This grass comes out underwater right here into a point. You want to hit the edge of the point right here. Anywhere it forms a good change is really where you want to focus your time on. I mean, those are key little subtle things, but they're stuff that people don't really know about, you know. Especially if you're a beginner or even intermediate, you wouldn't know to even fish that. It's the same thing with submerged grass. If you see submerged grass and you see holes in it, those holes that's what you want to cast to. Almost all the time they'll get it if they're there and it falls in that hole, they're going to get it. You can even make 2 or 3 casts to it, but usually I'll hit it one time and keep going. If they're there and they're active and biting, they'll get it. This is what they do every day. When they want to get their food, they'll get it. You know, I hear more times than none, oh, I had bites, but I couldn't catch any of them. I'm a firm believer that if you're not feeling weight and he doesn't come off a couple seconds after, it wasn't a bass, because bass they get what they want. Like food, I mean, that's how they survive. So when they see your bait, they're gonna get it. They're not gonna just bite it and put it down, you know. Now if they have it, hold on to it for a long time and let go of it, that's something totally different. You know, like, and you learn that by practicing for tournaments. When you fish without a hook, or you cut your hook off and you're just trying to get bites in an area to see where you're going to fish, sometimes you can't shake those fish off. You'll catch them with a you know, you don't even have a hook on there. Half your hook's cut off, and somehow they'll hold on to that bait almost till you get them back to the boat. So when you have a legit bite, that fish is going to hold on to it. The difference, the way that you can tell the difference, if you don't already know, is a bluegill. Now, little bass, little tiny, you know, 8-inch bass, they'll peck at it too. But when a bluegill hits your bait, it's going to feel like somebody did a drive-by on you. It's just going to be a bah, 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 bah. When a bass hits it, it's either a thump or you just see your line take off. That's the main difference. I mean, it's obvious to tell. Once you get the 2 bites, you can tell the difference. So a bluegill bite is a good thing, because you know that there's going to be bass nearby if there's bait, but you can't rely on just that and say, you know, that's a bass bite, because it's not a bass bite. There's a major difference. And if you guys haven't already noticed, this year has been incredible. I mean, this grass is as healthy as it can be. At the beginning of the year, it was a little worrisome because it had that algae on it, but it seems like it's gone for the most part now, and the grass is super healthy. They haven't killed any of it yet, so hopefully they won't do that. Every time they kill it, it just ruins the fishing for a while. But there was fry everywhere. I mean, the amount of 8 to 10 inch bass that are in here from last year or the year before is just amazing. There's more than I've ever seen. The lake's healthier than I've ever seen, and the numbers are way up. I mean, there's a great population of bass in here this year, which means it should get better the next few years. You know, and lakes kind of go in cycles. It'll be really bad, and then it'll be really good, and then it'll be okay, and right now it's at the good stage, and it's getting better. So we'll see what the next few years bring us. Size-wise, the big ones are still here. I mean, they're absolute giants. This spring, the water temperature was 45 degrees, and I caught numerous bass over 7 pounds. A few that were over 6, and just a shit ton of 5s. So they're around. It just seems like lately you have to pick through the smaller ones to get to the bigger ones, but there's a lot of fish around. It's really healthy this year.